If anybody needs to go at any point, just let me know and we can reschedule a portion of it. The first thing we're going to go over is the importance of blood sugar, insulin control, hormones, and blood testing. And then after that, we're going to go over the actual eating plan book, which everyone will get a copy of. Rick, have you seen the new book?
No.
Okay. Got a few modifications to it, particularly the diet list.
Okay.
If we need to, at that point, we'll take a short 2-minute break or what have you, and then we're going to go over the last part, which is to review your fitness evaluation. Everyone's going to receive an email homework prescription from me about what we're doing and what I'm reviewing and a reiteration of all the topics that I'm going over. I would ask that nobody ask any questions. Okay, I know that sounds a little crazy, but we don't want to get into back and forth conversation. We'll be here way too long. I'm super thorough though, and if anybody doesn't understand anything, let me know. I don't even know if you're going to need to take notes.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I mean, she's recording it anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
All right. Let me start off like this. I'd say about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to take on some private training. Okay? This guy wanted to pay me very handsomely, but there was only one problem with that. It was going to directly conflict with my own personal workouts. I've been working out with this guy for like 2 years or what have you, doing cardio. I meet him for cardio every night. But the appointment time that this guy wanted, this private client, was right at that same time. So I decided to do what I've done many times. I decided to go on ahead and take this extra work on, and I let go of my workout partner. I told myself, I'm self-employed. I can do this whenever I feel like it. It's not a big deal. And what ended up happening is I ended up taking 3 months off of working out. One of the points that I really want to make today is that you really have to know yourself and your tendencies. Like, what's one of my tendencies? My tendency is to veer towards workaholism, where I just start taking on way too much. Can anybody relate to that? And the next thing you know, areas of my life, or for example, of your life that are important, you just start falling off. You're going to need to become very consistent. That's the main key to ingredient to getting what you're looking for with this. That you're going to have to come here repetitively. So, if you take on way too much, next thing you know, you're going to stop being consistent. You have to know that about yourself. Well, when you're not working out a lot, there's also a strong tendency to not eat appropriately. And I wasn't doing that either because, bless you have to prep your own food. If you want to be successful on this eating plan or in this program, you have to cook your own food like 95% of the time. You can't afford to go out and eat all the time. You don't know what you're getting in your food. Quite often, there's salt and sugar. Almost all restaurants put salt and sugar in food. You're going to get bigger portions than you need, and you're choosing from a menu that's quite varied. So there might be opportunities, or not opportunities, but chances that you might pick something unhealthy. You need to be in control of what's happening. You need to be responsible for what's happening. And the only way to guarantee that is by prepping your own food. Well, since I was I was working so much, I wasn't making any time to do that. And I was eating out constantly. What was I eating? Pancakes for breakfast, waffles, bread, pasta, a gin and tonic here and there, some Skittles, whatever I felt like eating. Because, when you're in that mentality where, I'm not working out, I'll enjoy myself. Well, that's not going to help, obviously. But in about 3 months, I started to get a roll of fat all the way around right here. I've never had that before. I'm thinking, wow, I feel like I'm filling out. No, I just meant that I was getting fatter. That's all it meant. But around that same time, I started to do work for a physician here in town. Okay, but this guy is not your typical physician. He's what's called an age management medicine doctor. Now, what does that mean? Age management medicine or anti-aging? It sounds like a foo-foo type term, but what that really means is preventative health care. Okay. There's a big difference between where you're going to your family practice doctor, your internal medicine doctor, what have you, and going to see this particular guy. Your family practice doctor will operate on an insurance plan program. Typically, they'll have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 patients. And, let's say, for example, you pay your $30, $40, $50 deductible, you wait in the lobby for 45 minutes to an hour, and then you see the doctor for 15 minutes, he gives you a prescription, and you're out of there. I know that sounds kind of general, but, when you go to see this guy, like this doctor that I was working with, in order to see him for an annual exam, he doesn't take insurance. And he charges about $4,000 for a preliminary process, an annual exam process. But it takes about 4 to 5 hours. I mean, the quality of service and the level of service that you're getting is a lot different. And he only takes on about 300 to 400 patients max. That's it. So it's a much different way of operating, whereas for your family practice doctor to make any money, they'd have to do a lot of volume. But then the level of service is going to go down, in other words. But when you're talking about your health, I don't know if that's a good idea. So what happened was I had an opportunity to become the fitness and nutrition consultant to this man's patients. He was the chief medical officer for a company called Cenegenics. Cenegenics is like the leader or pioneer of age management medicine. What's age management medicine? Well, let's say you're all going to die from one of the big three: cancer, heart disease, or diabetes. But whether you get it at 55, 60, or whether you get it at 80, or just for example, is largely due to the choices that you're making on a day-to-day basis. So in other words, age management medicine is meant to just prolong your life, and that you're not going to get these big killer diseases until later, potentially. It was a great opportunity for me to work for this guy. I was thrilled to do this. He's been on 60 Minutes, 2020, CNN. People fly from all over the world to come to see him and to go to that Cenegenics Institute. So I was thrilled to do that. But in order for me to work for him, I had to go through his whole annual exam process, again, which normally costs $4,000, but I didn't have to pay a penny for it. So of course I wanted to do that. So what I want to do is I want to give you an example and a breakdown of some of the tests that were involved, and then show you my blood work so that you can have a greater understanding of the importance of that and how this can affect you and your diet and your progress. So one of the tests they do is called a DEXA scan. They lay out a big table like this, and a piece of machinery hovers over the top of your whole body. What that's going to measure very accurately is your bone density. Okay, it turns out, well, actually I'll go over the results here in a minute. Measure your bone density and your body fat percentage. My body fat percentage at the time was 20%, which is higher than it's ever been, and my bone density, come to find out, was low in my lower back, which kind of alarmed me a little bit. I don't want to run into osteoporosis. They do a carotid artery test, measure how much fat is in your arteries. That's important. They do a fitness evaluation very similar to what you guys just went through. But instead of putting you on the treadmill with the heart monitor, they put you on a bike, they put that mask on you, and measures your oxygen output. But the treadmill test that you did is just about as accurate as that is, without all the expensive equipment. And but the other thing that they did, which had a really big impact on me, aside from that whole bone density test, was to do a full blood panel. Now, there's a big difference between a standard blood panel of like 3-4 vials and a full blood panel of like 10 vials. Anybody in here had a full blood panel before? Okay, it's not that common for most people to get a full blood panel, particularly for you two because of your age. It's not like you need to go about doing that necessarily. But if you don't do a full blood panel, let's say you just do a standard blood panel, that's only going to give you a small amount of information. But typical is to do just a standard blood panel of 3-4 vials. Why? Because your insurance company won't normally cover those other tests. Reason being, unless they deem that something is wrong with you, they're not going to cover it. But that's not that advantageous, because you might be missing out on a significant amount of information that you can get from some of these other blood tests. So when I finally saw my numbers, I was, kind of alarmed. Not like heavily, but to the point where it's like I wanted to get serious, about my diet and my health and my exercise again. So hopefully that's the impact that I can make on you guys today, not just from going over the blood work, but reviewing everything, that you can be like, when you walk out of the door, you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to start eating clean. I'm ready to make a real commitment. And not just talking about it. So we're really going to do something about it. So let's take a look at my blood panel, for example. Now in all these tests, there's a range from low to high. Let's look at the first one. D3 and calcium. The range is 50 to 70 from low to high. I was only at 30. So it wasn't a huge surprise to me when I got these results back of why I had bone density issues. Secondly, you see how white I am. I never get any sun. That's a great source of D3. I'm not consuming dairy products because I'm lactose intolerant. And also, come to find out, another contributor to low D3 and calcium is that my hormones were low, as I will explain momentarily. So as a result of that, what I started taking was a vitamin D3 and calcium citrate supplements. Now, these are directly from that Cenegenics Corporation that doctor used to work for. And these are what are called pharmaceutical grade supplements. Now, there's a big difference between pharmaceutical grade and like food grade. Food grade is something that you would get at GNC, for example. Pharmaceutical grade has to be prescribed by a physician. Now, these aren't cheap. Okay, but I was taking these because my D3 and calcium were low. I wanted to bring them back up to par again. If you're not getting what you need in your diet, you can become deficient. And there can be consequences to being deficient in nutrients. But these aren't cheap. Okay? So what I did is I started a program with another company called Metagenics. Same type of quality. Okay? Now, the difference between pharmaceutical grade and food grade is that the quality is going to be a lot higher. They're regulated. And from bottle to bottle, you know what you're getting for the most part because it's consistent. And there's probably a lot more research done in this than in the food grade potentially. However, these are cheaper than the Synergenics. I acquired these because I started a program with another physician, and I'm now capable of giving these to my clients. In other words, if you guys have any interest in acquiring supplements for yourself, then I'm going to also send you a follow-up email which has an invite to the Metagenics website. If you want to get supplements for yourself, great. I'm not pushing this on anybody, it's entirely up to you. But how might you know if you need D3 or calcium? Well, there's going to be a questionnaire that you can fill out that can help you determine what areas that you might be deficient in, but ultimately the real way to do it is to get your blood tested. You can't know otherwise. So just because I'm recommending that you might want to consider taking this because I do this for myself, doesn't mean that you necessarily need it. Like my blood test showed that I was deficient in D3 and calcium. So that's one of the reasons why I'm taking this supplement. Thyroid panel is another important panel. More common for women than it is for men. If you have issues or concerns with your thyroid, it can be difficult for you to make the type of progress that you want because your thyroid controls your metabolism. And let's say you're doing everything in here perfectly. You're working out all the time, you're eating clean for the most part, and you're not losing. Well, you should. You should see progress as a result of that. But if you're not, then something could be going on in your thyroid. But again, we can't know that unless you get tested. I had a gal that was working out with me a couple of years ago prior to me learning all this information. Amy Piddle, as a matter of fact. I can't remember her. Yep. She was doing everything perfect. Wasn't losing an ounce of weight. I tweaked her diet a number of times. She just got, we both got frustrated, and she ended up stopping the program. I kept in touch with her, however, come to find out she went and got her blood test done, and she was, had thyroid condition. She went and got on medication, wasn't even working out, and started losing weight. So you got to know, obviously. But, that's not that common necessarily that you need to feel like you got to run out and get it tested, but it might not hurt. Let's see here. Hormone panel. All men and women have both testosterone and estrogen. If you have issues or imbalances with that, it can make it tough to lose weight, but it can lead to greater health problems. For example, in anybody, if you have low testosterone, it can lead to hair loss, it can lead to muscle decreasing, fat increasing, bone density decreasing, sexual function declining in men. It can lead to prostate enlargement. It can lead to basically that's the one for men, okay? If a woman is low in testosterone, it can make it very tough to lose weight, and it can also make it difficult to, might screw up your cycle a little bit, as well as, if your estrogen is off, but also can make it tough to lose weight if your estrogen is off. If a man has higher estrogen, which can be as a result of a number of things, but genetics can play a factor in that, then you can have fat that's difficult to get rid of around your abdomen or even on the chest, and it can lead to increased risk of prostate cancer. After 30 years old, for a man, your testosterone level will start declining. It's just the way it is. It's unfortunate. I don't think you have to worry about that right now. How old are you?
23.
Yeah, he's good. How old are you again?
32.
Okay, so it's possible. I mean, you never know. But I had no idea about this. I went and got my testosterone checked. And sure enough, my numbers were quite low. My total testosterone, 700 to 900 is the range. I was at 704. It's still in the acceptable range, but it's kind of low. But my free testosterone, 130 to 190, is 66.9 when I had it done. That's real low. Another one is DHEA. You can take a supplement for that. 350 to 500 was the range. I was at 144, so that's really low. And my insulin growth factor 1, which is like naturally occurring growth hormone, 2 to 4 was the range. I was at 3.2. Okay, so that's fair. That's not bad. As a result of this, and trusting in the physician, and doing research on my own, I decided that I was going to start taking testosterone. I've been on it for 2 years. Now, I'm not trying to get huge and buff. I just want my levels to be appropriate, that's all. Well, what have I noticed? Well, in a very short time period, 2 months, my body fat went from 20% to 10%. You ever see a guy that's like 40 and he looks like he's in shape, but he's kind of got a soft look to him? I was starting to get that, but since then my muscle density just came back again, and my vascularity did. My strength increased back up where it was, my energy. I mean, there's just a number of things that are associated with it. I'd recommend it, not for the two of you, but you might want to consider that getting done at some point. Okay, next panel that we're going to go over is the cholesterol panel. Now I want to pose a question to the group. What foods do you guys think that if you eat them on a regular basis is going to make your cholesterol go up? What do you think?
Red meats.
Okay, what do you think? All right, we'll skip you. What do you think?
Eggs, bacon.
Eggs, bacon, okay, how about you?
Any animal meat.
All right, what do you think?
Spam.
Spam, okay, I hadn't heard that. The common answer that's going to come up to that question is that if you are eating fried foods, the yellows of eggs, saturated fats, stuff like that, that's going to make your cholesterol go up. So in other words, if you're eating cholesterol-based foods, or, laden foods, then your cholesterol is going to increase. That's actually a small component. The real answer is carbohydrates. Okay? So let me give you an example of why and where that belief kind of came from. And if anybody can't see this, let me know. In 1 gram of fat that you consume, okay, there's 9 calories. In 1 gram of protein, however, and in 1 gram of carbohydrates, there's 4 calories. In 1 pound of fat on your body, there's 3,500 calories, which is why it can be difficult to lose just 1 pound of fat, because there's so many calories in a pound of fat. But we've all heard this before. If you want to lose weight, what do you got to do?
Cut calories.
Yeah, you got to eat less calories. And what has more calories in it than anything you eat? Fats. So it just makes sense that you should be on a low-fat, high-carb diet. That diet was around for many, many years. A low-fat, high-carb diet, because people are freaked out that if you're eating too much fats and cholesterol, you're going to have cholesterol issues. Our own government even kind of backed that up and followed the food pyramid. At the bottom of the food pyramid is recommended that this is the category that you're supposed to eat the most of, grains. So in other words, this was based on a low-fat, high-carb diet. What is now, however, the second biggest, most preventable killer in the United States? Anybody know?
Heart disease?
No, that's number 1, because there's a genetic component. Second biggest, most preventable, in other words, you can prevent it, killer is diabetes. Okay? What does diabetes cause from? Gluttonous, excessive carbohydrate intake. What is this eating plan promoting? Excessive carbohydrate intake. So in a sense, maybe this type of mindset and this food pyramid has been a contributor, because diabetes did not used to be the second biggest, most preventable killer. When you are eating excessive amounts of carbohydrates or eating the wrong types of carbs, your body can only hold and store so many carbs. That's just the way it is. Carbs are an energy source. If you're eating too much of them, and your body can't store them in your liver and your muscles, where are those carbs going to go?
Fat.
Yeah, to your body fat. Okay. So, for example, this is an artery. You're eating excessive amounts of carbohydrates. You start producing more fat in. And where do you store fat? Externally, but also internally, running through your arteries. Well, years of that can start to create clogging or blockage in the arterial walls. If that gets completely clogged, what's that going to cause? A heart attack or stroke. So therefore, now we see that excessive carbohydrates are contributing to not only diabetes, but heart disease, which is the biggest killer in the United States. So it's not fats that are the culprit, it's carbohydrates. What was I eating all the time?
Carbs.
Breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, all that stuff. Gin and tonics. My total cholesterol, 0 to 200 is the range. The acceptable range, I was at 184. That's not horrible, but good cholesterol should be your age plus 100, ideally. So when I started, I was at 184. I'm now at 149. Okay? My triglycerides, 0 to 100 is the range. I was at 88. That's on a little bit of the high end of the scale, but now I'm at 46. This is all from the dietary changes that I'm going to recommend to you. The bad cholesterol is called LDL, low density lipoprotein. 0 to 100 is the range. I was at 108. Now I'm at 91. But the other one that you really need to know about is called HDL, high density lipoprotein. That's the good cholesterol. You need that. Where do you get that? Nuts, seeds, olives, avocados, flax, and fish. But I wasn't hardly eating any of that. 50 to 200 is the range. I was at 58. So not that great. What does the good cholesterol do? It acts like a drain unclogger or a rotolooter, and it starts cleaning out this bad cholesterol. You need that in your diet. And good cholesterol helps lower body fat percentage. Was I eating hardly any of those foods? No. So what I also started to take was an essential fatty acid supplement. Now, why do they call it essential fatty acid? Because unless you're ingesting those foods or taking something like this, you're not going to be getting that. So your body, in other words, like there's essential amino acids. Essential meaning your body can't create it from something else, which normally your body will do. But if you're not getting these things, you're going to have deficiencies, and there can be consequences to that. So it's very important that you're getting good quality essential fats. Now I want to say something about supplements again. You're not meant to rely on any of this stuff. You need to eat real food all the time. This is just like an insurance plan. That's all that is. That's the way I look at it. Because sometimes it can be difficult to get all the nutrients that you need if you're not, really following the eating plan and making a conscious effort constantly. Now, by the way, these numbers aren't particularly great, and if I was 55 or older, had a family history of heart disease, if I had, warning signs for cholesterol problems and heart disease, I'd have trouble with these numbers. But you can start to turn around these numbers within a week to 10 days by making changes to your diet. There's also blood platelets on here. There's kidney and liver panels, but I'm not going to go over those. I had no issues with those. But the one series of panels that I want to go over in the most detail is the ones that can have the most effect on you. And they'll affect these other panels too, which is your blood sugar and insulin control panels. Now there's 4 of them. There's 4 of those panels. One, the most popular one, is to do your fasting glucose. That's where you fast for 12, 14 hours. You go and get your blood tested. That's basically going to tell you about your diet and your sugar levels for the last 24 hours. The range was 65 to 95. I was at 89. I'm in the normal range. Now I'm at 76. But what's that really going to tell me? Honestly, I'm not diabetic. If I was diabetic, that would be a valuable test for me to know. And I don't fast on a regular basis. That's not a common way that I eat. So to me, that's not really an accurate description of what I'm doing on a regular basis. Another one is to test your insulin. 1 to 5 was the range. I was at below 2. It's very important that you're sensitive to your own insulin. If you're not, it can be very, you can start running into health problems, like diabetes. Remember, if you're eating excessive and gluttonous amounts of carbohydrates, but let's say you're doing that over a long period of time. Well, eventually your pancreas might kind of shut down on you and stop producing insulin. Next thing you know, you have to be reliant upon insulin. You don't want to get to that point, obviously. That's called type 2 diabetes. They used to call it adult onset, but now kids get it. Okay? So you don't want to get to that point, obviously, but that's up to you completely. Glucose mean is an average. 0 to 100 is the range. I was at 122. Now I'm at 111. Ideal is to maybe be around 100. That's what the doctor's recommending to me, or less. But there's one test, the most important one, that's not normally done. Now, why is it not normally done? Because it's not normally covered by insurance, unless your doctor is savvy, and he can, get you to get it covered, or unless you're, borderline diabetic, and that's called hemoglobin A1C. Has anybody heard of that? Okay, her husband's a doctor, and she's a nurse. Okay, there you go. All right, so hemoglobin A1C. The range was 3.5 to 5.1. I was at 5.6. 6.5 is diabetic. Okay. Now, I'm not saying I'm on the cusp of becoming diabetic, but if I continue to eat that way, it might continue climbing. What hemoglobin A1C is, however, it's what's called a biomarker. Bio meaning biological or physical, marker meaning measurement. What is it a measurement of? Longevity. If you have high levels of sugar on a regular basis for long time periods, you are far more prone to acquiring some of the greatest killers in the United States. In other words, you're cutting off your lifespan. So when we were talking about age management medicine earlier, anti-aging, that's all it is preventative health care, is preventing you from getting those big killers and so then they happen later, not sooner. What are they? Heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, vascular disease, cancer, for example. What is another clue that you might have problems soon or down the line? Higher body fat percentage. Why is that? Well, think about this. What causes body fat to be, for most people to gain it? Well, your diet usually and lack of exercise. But to get more specific, high levels of sugar. Those are excessive carbohydrates because they're manufactured into body fat. And if you have higher body fat percentage, you're also prone to like a host of diseases. And like another term for that is called metabolic syndrome X. Have you heard of that? Where you're getting like, it's a very common to get some of the same symptoms. And you see it in older people. You get fat around the abdomen, you get high blood pressure, high cholesterol. You know, it's like you're getting a host of some of the same problems. And it's all related to the same thing, typically. So, essentially, what I want to really communicate to you guys is, you got to start putting some more pressure on yourself in regards to your health. Now, why do most people come see me? I want to lose weight. Here's what I would tell you. Who cares about that? Seriously, who cares about losing weight? That's not going to keep you motivated. It really won't. If just losing weight was enough to keep you motivated, you probably already look the way you want right now. But it's not. So you need a greater focus. You need to focus on your health. And that's one of the great things about doing a blood test. It puts pressure on you to stay accountable. Period. Because then you can get it tested every so often, like I do mine every 6 months. And then I constantly know where I'm at. It keeps me in check. And then if I have been eating poorly, then I'm steering my diet correctly. Okay, but let's go a little bit further into this, right? There's 3 food groups. We all know what they are. They're fats, proteins, and carbs. We just went over what fats are. What are proteins? Chicken, fish, eggs, turkey, beef, even soy and whey. Soy is not a great source. It can increase estrogen levels. Whey is fair. You want to eat real food as much as you can. But the culprit, the problem really lies more so in carbohydrates. That's where most people have the difficulty. It's not like I'm out eating a stick of butter or eating a whole chicken. You know, it's just not that common to be overindulging on proteins and fats that much. But where we are overindulging is carbohydrates, so we're going to focus in on that. So let's say Rick goes out tonight. He's like, you know what, I'm going to go enjoy myself before I start this eating plan. Yes. He goes out to dinner and he has a big plate of angel hair pasta with some meatballs, a couple slices of garlic bread, and 2 glasses of wine. Okay? Now, that's a very heavy carbohydrate meal. But again, we're going to focus on the carbohydrates. So let's say he eats that meal. The first thing that's going to occur is you have to start chewing it, obviously. The digestive process begins in the mouth through chewing. Saliva helps break down food appropriately. It's always better to eat food rather than drink it. So let's say he wants an orange or a glass of orange juice, for example. Well, an orange is appropriate, but a glass of orange juice, it might take like 8 oranges to make that 1 glass. That's too much sugar in one sitting, plus the oranges, in order for them to go from the orange to the carton onto the shelf at the grocery store, that they have to do what's called pasteurization, homogenization. You know, where they're, or processing, where you're basically, you're heating the orange at a high temperature. And that makes it very sugary, but that's why they have to, you know, just for 1 glass of orange, it's going to be so heavily processed. So you want to stay away from processed foods and excessive sugars. Anyway, so he eats that pasta meal. The digestive process begins in the mouth, then you get further into the small intestine, and the carbs get broken down into a very small particle, which is called a monosaccharide. A monosaccharide is a simple sugar. I'm going to use a lot of synonymous terms here. Sugars, carbs, monosaccharides, glucose, they're all basically the same thing, they're carbs. So anyways, you eat that carbohydrate, it gets broken down in the small intestine, and then it travels through your bloodstream, that carb, that sugar, to get to its destination. But it's the storage form of carbohydrates is called glucose, okay? Glucose. So your stomach, for example, is like a big bed of acid. It doesn't know the difference between a Milky Way bar, a piece of fruit, an apple, you know, or brown rice. All carbs get broken down and stored as glucose, okay? The glucose is then traveling through your bloodstream to get to its destination. Where are those carbs going? Where they're going is the cells of your body. Okay, that process is called glycation. You're providing sugar, carbs, or whatever you want to call it, or energy to the cells of your body. This will make a lot more sense here in a minute. All we're made out of is cells, really. And what do your cells use for fuel to do their job? Carbohydrates, sugars. So you eat the carbs, they're traveling through your bloodstream to get to their destination where they go in the cells of your body. Again, that process is called glycation. But what we're going to focus on is where they're going right now, which is the big three places. Your liver, your muscles, and your body fat. Now your liver and your muscles are like a gas tank. They can only hold so many carbs. So all excess carbs that you eat, that you don't burn off, or store in these two places, where they're going to go? To your booty, or to your stomach. They're going to your body fat. So let's say Rick has that big, heavy carbohydrate meal. That bread, the pasta, the wine. Guess what? These two gas tanks are now full for the next 48 hours off that one meal. Next 2 days. So tomorrow he goes to eat more carbohydrates. Doesn't eat as crazy. Doesn't matter. These gas tanks are already full. Where are those carbs going to go? Right to your fat. You have to control, people, how many carbs you eat on a daily basis. How many. And guess what? It's different for everybody. Why is it different? Because of your metabolism. I can eat 10 times the amount of carbs that Rick can. Why? Because my metabolism is super high. Why? Because I've been training with weights for a long time. He does too, however. But it's also because of my cardiovascular condition. My conditioning is super high because I've been doing it for years. Also, your hormones can play a factor in it. Like, let's say, for example, Michael Phelps. Have you ever heard of Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer? The guy could eat 10 times a day hot dogs and pizza and pasta, and he wouldn't gain anything. Why? Because he had the metabolism of a 12-year-old. Whereas you take someone the opposite end of the scale, let's say someone who's very heavy, they might have the metabolism of a 90-year-old. So your metabolism is largely going to determine how many carbs you can eat. We will discover how many that is for you today. Okay? So you have to control the amount of carbs you eat, because any excess carbs that you don't store in these two areas or burn off are going to go right to your fat. Let's focus in on a fat cell, however. How do the carbs that you've eaten that are now flowing through your bloodstream going to get to that cell? Well, it's not just going to happen. Some type of reaction has to occur in order for these carbs to get to the cell. All of your cells have what are called receptor sites. What are they receptive to? Typically hormones like insulin. Insulin then, in other words, when you eat the carbohydrate, you can't have all those sugars floating through your bloodstream. It'll make you sick. So your pancreas produces the hormone insulin. Insulin will attach to that receptor site. When it does, now it opens up a channel. So now all the carbs that you've eaten can start flowing out of your bloodstream into the cells. And if these carbs are going to a fat cell, for example, what's that going to do? Well, what's the job of a fat cell? To make more fat. Remember, carbs provide energy for your cells to do their job. Does everyone follow me on that? So if it's a fat cell, it's going to make more fat. If it's going to your muscle, it's going to be used for movement. If it's going to your kidney, it's going to do kidney things. The other thing that insulin does is it takes these fats and converts them into what's called free fatty acids, which are basically still fats. But then these fats can then be released back into the bloodstream for you to use as energy in between meals. Really, that's the main purpose of your body fat, is stored energy. It's like a battery. It holds that energy but then releases it for when you need it at a later time. How awesome would it be if you could access your own body fat all the time? You know how much faster you would get lean? I'm going to tell you how to do that. Now, your blood sugar would prefer to run like this, nice and steady throughout the day. Okay? But let's say that you eat a carbohydrate or something that's processed. What's that going to do? That's going to elevate your blood sugar. Now that's a normal, natural process. Again, that's called glycation. But let's say you eat something that's heavily processed or has a significant amount of carbs in it. That's going to take your blood sugar to abnormal levels. Not normal. Like cake, cookies, candy, ice cream, Pop-Tarts, soda, white bread, white rice, white potatoes, wheat bread, still high, bananas, watermelon. All these foods are super high in sugars. It's going to spike your blood sugar to abnormal levels, not normal. Alcohol will take your blood sugar to toxic levels. That's why they call it getting intoxicated. You're basically putting a poisonous substance in your body. Alcohol is the most highly processed carbohydrate that you can possibly consume. It's very hard on your body. That's why you can get a buzz right away from it, because it's basically pure sugar that you're putting into your system. And that's why it can take you a day or two to recover from it, and why you can get a hangover, because you're completely throwing your system off. It's very hard on your body. And additionally, you will not lose any body fat if you drink. Just know that. This program isn't worth anything to you if you're going to drink. You have to be willing to let it go for a little while. Not a big deal. Now, there's two measurements of this. One is called glycemic index, and the other is called glycemic load. These are rating scales of 0 to 100. Glycemic index basically means how fast that carb, once you've eaten it, it goes from your mouth to the bloodstream. So cotton candy, table sugar, soda, they get absorbed right into your salivary gland. It'll spike your blood sugar instantly. All those junk foods I mentioned, Pop-Tarts, cotton candy, soda, whatever, they all spike your blood sugar rapidly. But so does the white bread, the white rice, the white potatoes, the bananas, the watermelon. There's consequences to having rapid spikes of insulin. There's consequences to that. We'll talk about that. You have to avoid that, because you're not really going to utilize and take off body fat if you're spiking your blood sugar rapidly. So what we want to do is eat the carbohydrates that have a low insulin spike. What are they? Vegetables. Your new best friend. Okay? Now, vegetables, why is that they have a low insulin spike? Because there's not a lot of sugar in them. But there's still carbs. But what they also have, with the key to weight loss, is fiber. They have fiber in them. So let's take broccoli, for example. It doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, but it's got a ton of fiber in it. Fiber is very difficult for your body to break down and metabolize. Broccoli has cellulose, which is plant fiber. It's difficult to break down, but it also has insoluble fiber, which you can't break down, you just have to pass. So what that means is that because of the fiber found in the broccoli, because it's difficult to break down and metabolize, that means that the sugars found in the broccoli are released very slowly and evenly into your system throughout the day. You want that. That keeps your blood sugar stable. Now you're not going to have the consequences as a result of spiking your blood sugar high. Let's get back to this example. Carrots also are very high in sugar. So people say don't eat a lot of carrots. That's true. But they're also low in their glycemic load. In other words, glycemic index is how quickly that sugar goes from your mouth to your bloodstream. Glycemic load is how much overall sugar is produced. So you can still eat carrots, but don't eat them at night and don't eat them all the time. But getting back to this example, let's say Rick has that heavy carbohydrate meal, the pasta, the bread, and the wine. His blood sugar is at super high abnormal levels. Remember, you can't have all that sugar floating through your bloodstream or it'll make you sick. So then your pancreas produces the hormone insulin to equal amounts. Equal amounts. So now look, you've got super high abnormal levels of sugar and super high abnormal levels of insulin. What's insulin's job? Remember to open up that channel. So now all the carbs that you've eaten can start flowing out of your bloodstream into the cells. However, if you ate something that spiked you up real high quickly, there's going to be an adverse reaction. Your blood sugar is going to drop or plummet to very low levels. As a result of it spiking high, it's going to spike real low. What are you going to feel like when your blood sugar is real low? Groggy, tired, cranky. What are you going to be craving? Yeah, not a piece of broccoli, okay? You're going to be craving something because you are in a depleted state. So you're going to be craving something that's going to take you back up again, okay? But here's the big problem. Your insulin does not drop quickly. Why? Because it's metabolized and broken down slowly. So even though it did its job, opened up that channel, all the carbs flooded out of the system into the cells. Now your blood sugar's real low. Even though it did that job, since it's broken down and metabolized slowly, it's going to remain present in your bloodstream. In other words, it's still there, even though it already did its job. When that happens, this is very important to know, it shuts off your body's ability to use its own fat for energy. Now, when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, this is like the key to weight loss. Think about what that means. In the presence of insulin, you cannot access your own body fat. That's huge to know. So obviously you have to do everything you can to keep your insulin low. Is that popcorn? Oh, I thought it was popcorn.
Yeah, right.
Okay, it's cauliflower.
Are you listening at all?
Alright,
I'm
anyways,
watching this.
am I really going over this and she's being Okay, anyways. So if the insulin will remain present in your bloodstream. And now you can't access your body fat. Your blood sugar is real low again as a result of this eating like this. What are you going to be craving? Well, you're not going to be craving a piece of broccoli. You're going to crave something that's going to take your blood sugar up high again. Therefore, there's going to be a lot of insulin produced. But remember, since insulin doesn't bottom out, and now your blood sugar's up real high, there it goes back up again. So what's happening is that you're always going to be walking around with high levels of insulin. What's that going to cause?
Increase in
Diabetes. That type of pattern of lifestyle is super common. And now you're prone to the second biggest, most preventable killer in the United States, type 2 diabetes. What else is this going to cause? Okay, now remember, you eat something that takes your blood sugar up real high, all the insulin's produced, the sugars flood out of your system into your cell, your blood sugar drops real low. What are you going to be craving? More carbohydrates. Why? Because you have no energy. So you're going to eat something that's going to take you back up again, and more than likely it's not going to be a piece of broccoli, because since you're in a depleted state, you're going to have what's called a craving. You're going to be craving more processed or heavily sugared type carbs. Your blood sugar goes back up again. But look, these gas tanks are already full. So now all the carbs that you keep eating, where are they going to go? Right to your body fat. Where's your body fat located? Externally and internally, coursing through your arteries. If that gets clogged as a result of you being gluttonous like that over the course of time, now you're prone to the biggest killer in the United States. Heart disease. Because you can only eat and store so many carbs. All excess, you'll store in your body fat. Now, I'm going to tell you about another one that you may not have known about, the silent killer. When you're eating carbohydrates, they're broken down and stored as glucose. Those sugars are traveling through your bloodstream to get to where they need to go. Where are they going? The cells of your body. Now, that process is called glycation, which is normal and natural. But let's say you're excessive with your carbohydrates, or you're eating much of the wrong types. What is going to happen is you're going to start over-sugaring the cells of your body. That's bad news. Why? Well, your cells are made predominantly of protein molecules, which are supposed to move very freely within the soup of your cell. They're like an oyster, they're real slippery. But if you start over-sugaring the cells of your body, what's going to happen is these protein molecules start sticking together. That's bad news. What that can create is abnormal cell function or abnormal cell structure. What's an example of that? Cancer. Another term for this is called oxidative stress, which is why you guys should be eating a significant amount of antioxidants. Where do you get antioxidants? Fruits and vegetables. Do we eat nearly enough fruits and vegetables? No. So what I'm going to highly recommend is that you strongly taking something like this. This is Phytocomplete. This is from Metagenics. This is an antioxidant greens formula. And this is a multivitamin and multi-mineral formula, like Centrum, but pharmaceutical grade. That's the only reason why I take all this stuff. To ensure that I'm getting the nutrients that I need. But it's better for you to eat real food and be reliant upon them. So if you're doing this, you're not getting enough antioxidants, most likely if you're not eating enough vegetables. Another term for this is called cellular inflammation. Your actual cells are inflamed. Let's say Nikhil's knee is bothering him, or his shoulder. What can he do about it? It's inflamed. He can ice it down. Ice is an anti-inflammatory. He can take ibuprofen, that's an anti-inflammatory. He can rest it. He's mentally and physically aware that his knee is bothering him. Can you tell this is happening? No, of course not. It's at the cellular level. You can't see that's going on. Well, years of you being gluttonous with your carbohydrate intake may start to produce more and more of these types of cells. And what do cells do? Multiply. Don't think that cancer just pops up on you. No, in a lot of cases in youth, it may. we can't really explain that as easily, but in most cases, it's as a result of your lifestyle. It's been brooding over time. Because you can't see it in the cells, once that continues to grow and multiply, eventually they metastasize into a tumor. Women can get breast cancer at any age. You've got to start taking control, people, of your eating habits. Not to lose weight, but so that you can prevent the big three. But the beauty is that when you eat clean, and you, guess what? Not only do you get great health, but guess what you also get to be? Lean. The two are synonymous. Does everybody understand all this so far?
Yeah.
Any questions on that? Okay. Now, when your blood sugar is real low like this, what are you going to be craving? Again, it's not going to be a piece of broccoli. You're going to be craving something that's going to take you back up again because you're in a depleted state. How hard is it to resist a craving? It's really hard. I don't care if you're an athlete or if you're sedentary or who you are. It's very difficult to resist a craving. Why? Because your brain's main source of fuel is glucose. So when your blood sugar is real low like this, your brain is going to be screaming out for carbohydrates. And what does your brain control? Emotions. So no wonder it's difficult to resist a craving. Let's say we're driving down the road and somebody cuts her off and she gets this big rush of adrenaline. That's what's considered an emergency type state that she's in. You're not meant to be like this all the time. Guess what cravings are? The exact same thing. You're not meant to have cravings. When you clean up your blood sugar and get it running appropriately, guess what happens to your cravings? They go away. Got that? Okay. Let's go over the solution. There's 4 rules that are associated with the solution on how to change all this. The first rule is you can only have certain carbohydrates. What are they? Brown rice, sweet potato, steel-cut oatmeal, yams, almost all fruit, and all veggies. Now that makes your job a lot easier because now I'm giving you a specific list to choose from. Now it cuts off all these other possibilities. Now notice I didn't say white rice, I said brown rice. White rice is typically bleached and enriched. Okay, you want to stay away from that. It's valueless. I didn't say instant oatmeal, and I didn't say slow cooking like the Quaker guy. I said steel-cut oatmeal. Steel-cut oatmeal is not processed. The reason why the instant oatmeal or the 5-minute one can cook so quickly is because a lot of the good stuff, like the fiber, was removed. But then what does that do? That makes it high on the insulin spike. You want to avoid that. You want to eat foods in their natural state, like whole grains, like brown rice, and steel-cut oatmeal. Steel-cut oatmeal, I don't have it with me for some strange reason, but it's got the best texture, the best taste, and the most fiber. But it does take longer to make, but 20 minutes is not a big deal. If you want it to be real mushy, then it's going to take 40 minutes, but you can freeze it actually and make it for a whole month. So it's not that big of a deal to make the steel-cut oatmeal. How do they get a piece of wheat, which let's say looks like this, to look like a loaf of bread? How do they get a piece of wheat to look like a loaf of bread? That's called processing. Whenever you process a food, you're changing the texture of that food dramatically. It does now not contain the majority of good things that were in it. So on the eating plan, there's no bread, there's no pasta. And I don't care if it's whole wheat. It's still processed. It's still going to be higher in the glycemic index scale. You'll still be more inclined to wear it as fat, wear it. So obviously you want to eat foods in their natural state. I didn't say white potato. I didn't say a red potato, like the red skin with a white inside. I said sweet potatoes or yams. That's much lower in sugar. A white potato is the equivalent of you eating a Three Musketeers bar. It has that type of sugar spike for you. So brown rice, sweet potato, steel-cut oatmeal, yams, almost all fruit, and all veggies. I didn't say bananas and watermelon. They're too high on sugar right now, so we're leaving them out of the program temporarily. So only certain carbs, and you have to make a commitment to stick to that. Rule number 2, is you can only have a certain amount of carbs per day. Only a certain amount. Why? Remember, as we said earlier, it's different for everybody based on your metabolism. I might be able to eat 5 times a day carbohydrates, where Rick might only be able to eat 2. But we're going to discover how many you can eat here shortly. Now, there was a book that came out in the early 70s, and when it came out, there was a lot of controversy on this book. Why? Because it was going against everything that was being promoted for many, many years, which is that you should be on a low-fat, high-carb diet. The book was promoting a low-carb, high-fat diet. The book's the greatest selling diet book in history, and it's on the 50 best-selling book list of all time. Anybody know what it is? It's the Dr. Atkins diet. What Atkins is promoting, however, is that you need to learn how to control your carbohydrates. A lot of people think Atkins is a no-carb diet. It's not a no-carb diet. It's a low-carb diet. He's saying that you have to learn how to control your carbohydrate intake. Now, I was very opposed to reading this book for a long time because I was under the same mindset that if I'm eating a lot of carbohydrates, or pardon me, if I'm eating a lot of fats, which is what the diet's promoting, then I'm going to run into cholesterol problems. You can actually be on the first phase of the Atkins diet, which is called induction. And you can be eating a lot of fats and more calories, and guess what will happen? You'll still lose weight and your cholesterol goes down. Why? Because as we had just talked about, carbs that you eat are what affect insulin. Fats have no effect, if any, on insulin. So you can actually eat more fats and your cholesterol will go down. Does that make sense? Insulin is the fat-producing hormone. So I was really opposed to reading this book for a long time because I was under that same belief that if I'm eating excessive amounts of fat, I'm going to have cholesterol problems. But I finally broke down and read the book. I highly recommend that you read the book, just for an information resource. I don't agree with everything in it. I'm not an advocate of dairy products or eating too much fat. Okay, but it's a tremendous wealth of information, this book. So what Atkins does is he takes you through a 4-phase process to learn how to control your carbohydrates. The first phase is called induction. Induction means to induce. You're inducing your body to start using fat for energy all the time. The opposite of that is where y'all might be, which is where you're eating for energy. Remember how we just talked about that? When your blood sugar gets low, what do? You eat carbs. But remember, the gas tanks fill up. So all those extra carbs that you eat go right to your body fat. That's not the solution. The solution is to eat a lower fat diet, or pardon me, a lower carb diet. But on the Atkins, if you're doing the induction phase, that's rapid fat loss. That's just complete fat loss, where you're only using fat for energy. Why? Because your carbohydrates are really low, only at 20, 30 grams per day. The only way to do that is to just eat vegetables for your carbohydrates. Okay? And then your body takes these free fatty acids, converts them into what's called ketones, and you go into a state called ketosis, which is complete lipolysis. Lipids, fat, same thing, complete fat loss. But it's not realistic for you to stay on the induction phase because it's very low carb and you need carbs for energy and you need them for nutrient density and value. So then you go to the next phase, which is called OWL, ongoing weight loss. Then you go to pre-maintenance and then you go to maintenance. So basically what's occurring with each phase of Atkins is you're adding 10 grams of carbs on a daily basis to your intake. So let's just say, for example, for Nikhil to maintain his weight, just to maintain. I'm just throwing this number out. Let's say he eats 50 grams of carbs per day. His weight will stay exactly the same. But what if he eats 80 grams of carbs per day? What's going to happen?
Gain.
Hey, he's going to keep gaining because he doesn't need those extra carbs. But let's say he only eats 30 grams of carbs per day. What's going to happen? He's going to keep losing. How awesome is that? Once you discover exactly how many carbs you really need, based on your metabolism, it's only a matter of time before you get down to the weight that you want to. That gives you power and control. But you have to discipline yourself to stick to that carb count per day and not go beyond that. In other words, what has to become more important, and it's very valuable that you understand what I'm telling you. What has to become more important is your desire to get lean and healthy than the pleasure that you get from indulging in the food. Remember that. It's an instant, momentary pleasure from eating that piece of chocolate, but you will not get what you're looking for. That's how you got to start thinking, in a sense. You got to become that serious about your desire to get lean, such that you're willing to put that aside for a while. You put it aside for a while. That's called discipline and self-control. It's not a big deal to go 3 months without cheating. Seriously, this program is a challenge. Don't you want to really see what you're capable of, how lean you can really get? Wouldn't that be exciting? And how super healthy you can get? You got to be willing to put that stuff aside for a little while. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world if you can't eat chocolate for 3 months. Or if you can't have a gin and tonic for 3 months. If you can't go 3 months without a gin and tonic, I've got another phone number for you. Okay? I know. Everybody know what that number is? Okay, you can only have a certain amount of carbs per day. All excess carbs that you eat that you don't burn off, you're going to wear. Rule number 3, no carbs 4 to 5 hours before you go to bed. No carbs 4 to 5 hours before you go to bed. If you eat that carb at night, let's say it's still the right type of sweet potato, but you eat it at night, doesn't matter. You're going to wear it. Why? Because a carb is an energy source, and if you don't burn it off, you'll store it. So at night, even though the sweet potato is correct, and because it's the right type, you omit that and you only have like salmon and broccoli. Now broccoli is still a carb, but it's real low in the glycemic index, so it's not going to affect you. Another thing to remember is you should wake up hungry. That's one of the keys to weight loss, is waking up hungry. But if you're eating late, or if you're eating carbs at night, that's not going to happen. So just know if you're waking up hungry every day, you're probably burning fat. Because what's your body utilizing for energy throughout the night? It's only fat. Or it might utilize the immediate carbohydrates, but then it starts tapping into your fat. So no carbs 4 to 5 hours before you go to bed. That rule alone can take 10 pounds off. Rule number 4 is the most important rule, but it's also the most neglected rule. Why? Because it requires the most effort. You have to, this program is about 2 key words. 2 key words. Effort and getting uncomfortable. You will need to do things you do not want to do and that make you mentally and physically uncomfortable. That doesn't sound very motivating, right? But that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Rule number 4 is the most important rule and the most neglected rule. You must eat no less than 5 servings of raw, roughage or fibrous vegetables a day. No less than 5. What has more fiber in it? Cucumber or broccoli? No, broccoli. This will be on the follow-up email I send to you. Okay. Cucumbers, tomatoes, and bell peppers are more like a fruit. They're almost all water and they've got seeds in them. You will not lose body fat eating those. There's no fiber in them. Mushrooms and onions, same thing. No substance, no fiber in those. Lettuce and spinach, same thing. But what are most people eating a lot of? And they think, well, I'm getting a lot of vegetables. I eat a lot of salads.
Yeah.
That's not going to cut it. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't eat salads and eat those other foods I just mentioned, but those are better as snacks. You still need them for nutrient value as well. But they don't have the fiber. In order for you to get to lose body fat, remember you have to keep your blood sugar low. How do you do that? By eating a ton of fiber. What are the vegetables that have the fiber? Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, asparagus, green beans, Brussels sprouts. Yum. Right? No. One has, just for you to get the amount of fiber that you need from a bowl of spinach, you'd have to eat a massive bowl of it like this. The better types of leaves for you to eat are the ones that are thicker, coarser, and denser. Kale, collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, cabbage. Just in cabbage alone, there's 4 or 5 different varieties. Do you see the difference between that type of leaf and a piece of lettuce or spinach? The density of that leaf is much thicker, that's fiber. What has more fiber in it? Cooked broccoli or raw broccoli?
Raw broccoli.
Correct. The majority, if not all of the vegetables that you eat should be raw. Heat, when you cook the broccoli, it kills nutrients and dissipates fiber. And then it gives you a lot of gas. You need to eat raw veggies predominantly. That's what's loaded with fiber. Now, some people can have a stomach reaction to raw vegetables. You can flash cook, just briefly cook your vegetables if that's the case. But you need to eat food in its natural state. Now, I don't like any of those vegetables that I just mentioned to you. So what do I do about it? Well, what I do is, and what I've done and what I continue to do, is I've found solutions on how to eat the vegetables so I can tolerate them. So for example, I want to give you an example day of what I eat. Okay, you might think I'm crazy, but who cares? All right, here's my breakfast. I'll do 5 egg whites and 1 yellow. You can have 1 yellow for every 3 to 5 whites. You don't need the yellows, that's got the cholesterol. The whites have the protein. Then I will do a serving size of steel cut oatmeal, which is about the size of my fist. You can add cinnamon or berries to that if you want to. But then I'll do a serving and a half of raw broccoli and a serving and a half of raw cauliflower. That's my breakfast. Doesn't that sound good? No, of course not. So what I did is I bought one of these. This is a food chopper, a slap chop. What this does is, when you hit the top of this thing, it minces whatever you're chopping into very small pieces, and it turns every time. Look how easy this thing is to clean. If you're using it for broccoli, it just rinses right off. Okay? But what I did is, so the next morning when I eat that, my breakfast, I take that minced cauliflower and broccoli and I mix it into my steel cut oatmeal. The steel cut oatmeal has a much stronger taste than the broccoli and cauliflower does, and because it's minced up so small, you don't even notice it. It masks the taste of that nasty raw broccoli and cauliflower. But look what just occurred. I've consumed a serving and a half of each. I'm now at 3 of my 5, and it's only meal 1. See what I'm saying? You have to look for solutions on how to get those vegetables in. By the way, the most important meal to eat vegetables is in the beginning of the day. The most important meal. Why? It gets your blood sugar going appropriately for the day. So make sure you eat roughage vegetables at breakfast. Like you can have an omelet with chopped broccoli and cauliflower if you want. Okay, and then 3 hours later or what have you, I'll have an apple and some cashews. You should eat every 3 hours. That's ideal. That keeps your metabolism active throughout the day. It helps to do that. And don't eat a carb. If I just ate that apple, don't eat a carb alone. It could be a higher insulin spike. Eat a fat or a protein with it. So 3 hours later after that, I'll have another 3 servings of veggies. Look, I'm at 6. I'm 1 over my 5, and it's only lunchtime. Vegetables are the only food category that you can have more than 1 serving of in a meal. So if you want a bacon and eggs, no, you'd have to combine those 2 together into 1 serving. Does that make sense? But you could have broccoli and cauliflower if you want. That's the only food category in the program, as you will see shortly, that you can double up on in a meal. So for meal 3, I'll chop up kale, collard greens, and cabbage. And for my filler, I'll use Swiss chard. I mix that in a big mixing bowl. I stick them in those stackable Tupperware containers. I take that with me in one of these things right here. When I'm ready to eat that, and there's about 3 servings in there, at that point I could add in cucumbers, mushrooms, onions, tomatoes, bell pepper, stuff like that. Okay, as an add-on. But those don't count towards the eating plan. But then in order for me to tolerate that nasty kale and collard greens and Swiss chard, I add extra virgin olive oil and vinegar. Oil and vinegar. The oil and vinegar in my dressing basically is a much stronger taste than the nasty kale and collard greens. It masks the taste of those leaves, and now it's just like I'm eating a salad. It's not a big deal. See what I'm saying? You have to start looking for solutions on how to eat your veggies so you can tolerate them. I'm already at 6. It's 1 over my 5 for the day. All right? Now, in order to make this whole thing work right here, in order to make this whole thing work so that your blood sugar is starting to run evenly and not like this all the time, where there's consequences, you have to do your own induction phase. Now, the Atkins induction is extreme. We're not going that extreme. Okay? What on my old eating plan, as you'll remember more than likely, I allowed for 1 cheat meal per week. Okay? I still allow for that. But for now, instead, you have to go 30 days before you get your first cheat meal. So 30 days from when you start the eating plan, then you can have your first cheat meal. Why? Let's say that Rick has that big pasta meal. Then it takes, these gas tanks are full for the next 48 hours. Then a couple days goes by, he's eating clean. Now he's starting to re-regulate his blood sugar again. But here comes the weekend all over again. See what I'm saying? You're never really getting your blood sugar to where it's stable for long time periods. And then you're never going to really access your own body fat. You have to be willing to let go of that stuff and make a commitment to this eating plan for a little while so that you can start re-regulating your blood sugar to lose the body fat that you want. And then when you have your cheat meal 30 days from now, guess what? You might not like how you feel. Now let's say Andrea eats, she's eating crappy on a regular basis, but then she has some broccoli. Is she going to notice that? Is that going to do anything for her? No. But let's say she's been eating really clean for a while, and then she has some pizza. How do you think she's going to feel? Horrible. You won't really notice how bad you feel eating those types of foods. Lay off of them for a while. It's very hard on your body to digest all that stuff. Okay? So 30 days before you get your first drink, and 30 days before you have your first piece of bread. Remember, if you can't go 30 days without a drink, you won't lose any body fat. Alcohol is pure sugar, and it's impossible to lose weight when you're drinking. I argue with clients about this all the time. I can't give up my glass of wine at night. Well, then you get very comfortable with having this relationship with your body fat for however long you decide to do it. It's the way it is. Okay, we're moving on to the next section. Anybody have any questions on that? But before we do that, however, protein bars and shakes. There are no protein bars on this eating plan. Why? Because they have excessive amounts of sugar in them typically. That's what makes them taste good. And they're processed. You see what I'm saying? We want to get away from processed, convenience-oriented diet. You want effort. That's you prepping food and eating real food. That's effort. See the difference between, protein bars and shakes? This is chemically engineered food. This is what I might recommend to you if you were going to take a protein powder. This brand called J. Rob's, it's a whey protein. There's another one called Designer Whey, which is good. This is whey isolate, means it's pure, but it has a sweetener called stevia, which is an herb, which doesn't affect your blood sugar. Cheaper protein powders have cheaper types of sweeteners in them. But this doesn't have all those sugars, unlike a meal replacement shake. Okay, so just powder with water. Got that? But no protein. All right, now we're going to go into the book. Does anybody need a break? Is everybody okay?
Can I maybe just move my stool somewhere else so I'm a little more comfortable?
Yeah.